This is 10X Recruiting, a podcast from MetaView. Let's get after it. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10X Recruiting brought to you by MetaView. So I am in the lab, I'm grinding, and I want to share some things that I've been thinking about and working on with you guys this week. So let me start with what I did last week. I was at Day One Ventures CEO Converge, and it's essentially where we get the entire portfolio together of all the CEOs, put them in one spot, which was the montage at Laguna Beach. Pretty dope. And, there's all sorts of things, right? They have the panel stuff, which we've all seen before, but then there's like dinners and those sorts of things, which are also really cool. So I want to just give you guys a couple quotes I heard from last week. I'm not going to tell you who they're from. I will tell you they are from CEOs. And I think they're pretty interesting as it relates to the talent and people world. So the first one is, I don't care about team coherence. I care about spikes. I don't care if the team doesn't get along. So what this CEO was saying is essentially like, I don't care about if CFO of finance and CRO, if they don't like really love each other. And it made me think about like, how important is chemistry among peers, especially probably execs who this CEO was referring to. And so I started to think about teams that I had been on in the past. And I think there's always just this case of like people who you really like love working with, and you want more of those people for sure. And then there's people who you don't enjoy working with. And so in my case, as I go through that, the people who I really didn't enjoy working with, it was typically because they weren't good at their jobs. It was less about the, inner relational dynamics of the human and more about, did they actually do what they said that they were going to do? And did they do it at a high level? It also made me think about sports. So the famous Lakers teams with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe and Shaq didn't get along that much, but they won a lot. So it made me really think about how much do I need to like the person and what actually makes me like a peer? And I think what makes me like a peer is if they're really good. So I thought that was an interesting quote and something I'm going to continue to chew on. The other one, which I posted on LinkedIn today, was, if you read my Glassdoor, it looks like I'm running the Benghazi embassy. And so what the CEO was referring to was an acquisition strategy that they use. So they're going out and acquiring companies, bringing those companies in, adding the revenue from those companies in addition to the entire team. And when you do acquisitions, sometimes they're messy and sometimes things aren't super clear. And what the CEO was essentially saying was, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay that it's a little bit messy. I'm okay that we're working through these things. We don't pretend to have everything figured out here. And if people don't like it, they're going to complain on Glassdoor, but they're also ultimately going to vote with their feet. And it did make me think about Glassdoor as a data point, which I think, probably 5-6 years ago was a more important data point than it is today. But I think it's a little bit overrated. The last one I think is a little funny, also potentially controversial, is hire Mormons for sales and then ask them this question: where did you get deployed for your mission? And the CEO then said, hire the people that went to Afghanistan. The church picks the best people for the hardest places. Don't hire the kids that sold Mormonism in Kentucky. So I live in Salt Lake. I am not Mormon, but I'm friends with many Mormons. And I will tell you, they're very good at sales. Utah has a ton of salespeople. A lot of tech companies come here and build their sales teams here. It's like one of the things that they're known for. And the thesis that people have had is you do it here because selling religion is maybe the hardest thing on planet Earth to sell. And if you could do that effectively, you could probably sell B2B software effectively too. So those are my 3 takeaways from last week. I'll keep you guys posted on anything else I learned or any second order effects from this conference. Really today, though, I want to spend time talking about the MIT report that dropped, which I'm sure everyone has seen, and the headline, at least by now, which is 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing. What is going on here? If you listened to last week's episode of All In, they would tell you that we're in the trough of disillusionment, right? Like people have promised a lot of stuff that AI is supposed to do, and it's just not living up to those things, at least yet. And they're bullish on ultimately AI living up to a lot of this promise. But they did talk about, a lot of the last mile stuff for AI is going to require humans. I've had a couple dinners recently with heads of talent, chief people officers, and my biggest takeaway from these dinners is the lack of curiosity and experimenting with AI. And so, as I've clicked into it a little bit on my other podcast with Kelly and I have talked about it quite a bit as well. And Kelly's really honest with this. And I think she speaks for a lot of people who are not comfortable speaking when she says, I don't have time. Like my plate's already super full. And when I go and experiment with these things, it like takes more time. And I've actually had that experience too. Like when I go and experiment with AI tools, if I'm doing it in the flow of my work, it's now no longer the flow of my work. And I'm experimenting with a new flow of work. And that takes longer. And so I've been trying to think about how do we get people to use more of these tools? And is it really that big of a problem? Well, then yesterday I had another conversation, very large public tech company, head of recruiting ops, who said, we can't get people to use AI. So I am now going to go on a crusade for the listeners of this podcast. 2 weeks ago, I issued a challenge. Spend 10% of your time, like a Friday afternoon, couple of hours, tinkering with AI, and then share your results. Basically, there's been a couple of people that have pinged me about this, but I actually think what I can do to help kickstart this is to give you guys ideas and to show you how I'm using it. So you know exactly what to do whenever you think about an idea in the shower or when you're brushing your teeth on how AI can make your life better. The other thing I want to hit on really fast is this is critical. This is mission critical for you and your career. If you are not using it every day, somebody will. And the company is going to pick somebody who will use AI versus the person who's resistant to it. So I hope what you take away from me tinkering with this stuff live is that it's not that crazy to do. It's not super complicated. It's kind of fun. You can get a lot of leverage from it. And it's really not as scary as you think. So I'm going to show two examples today. The first one is ChatGPT, and I created a custom GPT. So I'll set the scene for you before I share my screen and show you all the details here. So the context is I post on LinkedIn regularly, and oftentimes I will have a kernel of an idea, but I don't have like the full post like flushed out. And so I don't really have a great thought partner on this stuff to riff with me on the message I want to get across. And so let me just show the GPT and then I'll continue to walk you guys through this. All right, here we go. So, this is like showing somebody your Google search history. So I got to be careful here. But the high level of what I'm showing you right now is the GPT area of ChatGPT. So as I mentioned, I'm thinking about LinkedIn posts all the time. I need a brainstorming partner. So let me show you the back end of what I call the GPT Nolan's copywriter. Let me show you what's on the back end here of my Nolan's copywriter GPT. So the description that I put in is it creates copywriting that sounds exactly like what Nolan produces. So like me as the human, this is what I'm doing. And this is where the magic is in the instructions. So on the instructions, I say, this GPT produces banger LinkedIn posts from Nolan that optimize for impressions and engagement. You are now definitely making a judgment on who I am as a person, but it's like true. Like, if you live in the world of social media, like you have to have stuff that stands out. And that is kind of my brand. Then I give it some instructions here, which is it always starts with the hook and optimizes for that hook to be compelling, contrarian, or radical. And then I just give a couple of examples. So I literally now here have just taken examples from LinkedIn that have gone pretty viral in the past and just dropped them in. And so there's one there. Here's another example here. And that's it. Like this took me maybe 15 minutes to create. And then I've maybe spent another like 2 to 3 minutes dropping in other posts that have performed pretty well. And the thing about this is like, it's actually really fun for me. So I can use this thing in two different ways, which I'll show you now. So I can basically, like the CEO of Benghazi comment, right? So let me just take this and drop it in. Say, I heard this quote this week. Help me write a quick post about it for LinkedIn. And then let's see what it comes up with. So here's the output from Nolan's copywriter. It says, if you read my Glassdoor, it looks like I'm running the Benghazi embassy. That's a real quote I heard this week, and it's hilarious until you realize how common it is. Glassdoor reviews are often written by employees you fired, people who hated being held accountable, interns who didn't get a return offer, high performers who wanted change but never got heard. The loudest voices on Glassdoor are rarely your best. That doesn't mean ignore them, but it does mean you need a stronger narrative. Because if you're building something special, someone will always have something nasty to say. Now, I actually didn't use it for this use case. I probably should have, because this is definitely better than what I did. But you can kind of see like the kernel of the starting point here for me, right? Which is I got this quote, it's in my head, but I want to flush it out more. And typically how I would have done this without AI is I would have called one of my homies. And that conversation is going to, be it's going to be all over the place. We're going to talk about a ton of different things. And then ultimately we're going to get to this. But like, I can't spend that bullet, every day with them. And also like talking to them specifically about my LinkedIn posts is probably narcissistic, and some other hard adjectives I would inject in there. And so this becomes like a thought partner with me. I never have once taken the output of this, copied and pasted it into LinkedIn. I'm always then editing and riffing with it. And that's, I think, a big takeaway for you all, which is if you're taking AI right out of ChatGPT and dropping it in, that is the definition of AI slop. That's not where the genius is. The genius is riffing with it to where it takes you from, where you're currently at the 5-yard line with 95 yards to go. And it takes you inside the red zone. It takes you to the 20. You still need to come up with the content to get it across the line. But this is significantly better than just sitting at a blank screen with the cursor blinking, being like, what am I going to come up with here? All right. The second use case I want to share with you is MetaView. So I am using MetaView a lot now in my day-to-day as I am doing executive search. And I have a very specific style of how I like to communicate my intro call to the hiring manager, the CEO. And I think this is one of the things that used to take me probably like 45 minutes after a call, which sounds insane, but it is true because I have, high quality bar and high attention to detail that now with MetaView is taking me like a minute. So let me show you how I do this. All right. So this is MetaView, and this is the back end of my template, which I call Nolan's screen. You can see in my personal library here, I also use one for the 10X prep when we have other guests on the pod. Similar thing, but this is more relevant to recruiters. So with MetaView, you can organize how the transcript, or rather the summary, is shown once MetaView does its AI magic. So I always like to start with the recommendation. And what I put in here is like, who is it for? It's for the hiring manager. So I'm saying this recommendation is for a hiring manager that wasn't on the call. And then I give it the instructions that I want, which is the summary should begin with a recommendation in this format. I spoke with insert candidate name on day of the week. I recommend we move forward. Here are my notes, followed by a series of bulleted notes. So then I get into like a little bit more of the instructions, which I would say is like the nuance to how I like to communicate. So I love Alex Hormozi. If you guys don't know who he is, he's awesome. He's an amazing communicator. And what I think what's great about Hormozi is he's super concise while also saying like the most profound things you've ever heard in your life. And so I say to the MetaView AI, the output of the note should be in the communication style of Alex Hormozi. And then I drop in a little bit more info there. Then I use examples of summaries rather, that I've sent to hiring managers. Or I use examples based off of, other content that's been great in the past. So that's what I do for the recommendation section, which is what starts first. Then I'll do the summary of the call. Then I'll get into the questions I ask the candidate. And so the questions I ask the candidate are, what are you most proud of in your career? And then MetaView gives the answer in bulleted form. I ask around team building. So on the search I'm currently working on right now, this is really what the CEO cares about. And so I ask that question, and then MetaView drops in, the summarized bullets of what the person says. And then I ask like what they're optimizing for. So like, what are they thinking about in their next role? And then if they're actively interviewing, and that basically summarizes like my first call. So this is something that for me ended up taking maybe 15, 20 minutes just to get off the ground. And then I've been tinkering with it since then. So again, I hope you guys take away this stuff is not, it doesn't take even the 4 hours that I'm challenging you to set aside every week. It doesn't take that long, right? To get this thing going, it takes 30 minutes, an hour, maybe. But then the magic is just using it and starting to become, I use the word native, right? Just testing and tinkering and seeing what's up and like following your curiosity, trying to go to AI first before you go to another human. Because ultimately we do have to rewire how we get work done. And so I get it. Everyone's busy. We all have more shit on our plate than ever before. Companies are continuing to just fill that plate up and it's overflowing. And we want to spend time with our kids and our families and our dogs. And trust me, I have all those things and I want that too. But the whole idea of AI is it's supposed to make our lives easier. And there are tools that are doing that today. So I hope you guys take these examples and run with them. Again, please share with me if you have other examples and stuff that you're working on. And let's just start to share more with the community. Let's help each other get better. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Peace.